Arthur Fleck was born in one of the most forsaken corners of Gotham, where the streets were always coated in a layer of grime and despair, and the buildings seemed ready to collapse under the weight of endless rain and time. From his earliest days, darkness surrounded him, not only from the cold walls of the apartment, but from the hands of those who were supposed to protect him. His adoptive mother Penny and the men who came into their home rained blows and humiliation upon the fragile body of the boy, leaving bruises on his skin and cracks in his soul. His head took heavy blows more than once, and it was then that a strange condition settled into his mind. In moments of pain, fear, or deep sadness, laughter burst from his chest, uncontrollable, sharp, as if his body had decided to mock its own owner. The boy grew up in a cramped apartment where the air smelled of medicine and dust. Penny often lay in bed, telling her son about a world where a smile could change everything, where people valued those who brought joy. Arthur absorbed those words like the only light in the darkness. He began to dream of a stage where he could stand before a crowd and make them laugh, not from pain, but from pure delight. But the reality of Gotham was different. The streets were filled with people rushing past, ignoring the thin boy with empty eyes. School and the courtyard brought only new bruises and mockery, while home offered more beatings. Over time, memories of early childhood faded into fog, leaving only the echo of that laughter that now followed him everywhere. As an adult, Arthur continued living in the same apartment, now just with an aging Penny. The city around him had barely changed. The same graffiti on the walls, the same rats in the basements, the same crowds where everyone fought to survive. Arthur worked as a clown for an agency that sent him onto the streets holding advertising signs. He put on a bright costume, a red nose, and a wig, stepping out into rain or cold to twirl the sign in front of stores and schools. His hands froze, his legs ached from long hours of walking, and his back hunched under the weight of humiliation. Sometimes teenagers snatched the sign, chased him through alleys, and beat him until he fell onto the wet asphalt. Then the laughter erupted again, drowning out the groans of pain, and Arthur lay there staring at a sky with no stars. At home, he took care of his mother. He cooked food, handed her pills, helped her move around the room. Penny often spoke of rich people who could help and wrote letters hoping for a reply. Arthur listened, nodding, but inside him an empty space kept growing. He attended sessions at a state clinic, sitting on a hard chair and swallowing a handful of pills every day. 7 pills, then more when the previous one stopped working. The depression never lifted, psychosis sometimes whispered in his ears, and the laughter flared up at the worst moments. On the street, in the subway, during conversations with coworkers. His colleagues at the agency laughed at him too. One of them, a kind guy named Gary, sometimes defended him, but the rest simply turned away. In the evenings, Arthur came home and turned on the television. On the screen appeared the popular host of a late-night show whose jokes made the audience roar with laughter. Arthur watched without looking away, imagining himself there, under the spotlights, microphone in hand. He kept a thick notebook where he wrote down his thoughts and jokes, flipping through the pages with thin fingers. Sometimes he danced alone in the room, spinning to music from an old radio, feeling his body become light for a moment. Those moments were the only relief from the heaviness of a city where the rich rode in limousines past the poor, and the police turned a blind eye to street fights. One day in the building's elevator, Arthur met a woman named Sophie. She lived 1 floor above with her daughter, and her gaze lingered on him for a moment. From that day, he thought about her constantly. He watched her from a distance, imagined walks and conversations. In his imagination, they sat together watching television, laughing at the show. Reality was simpler. He simply stood by her door, listening to the sounds from her apartment, then left without saying a word. Meanwhile, the city grew more tense. Strikes, layoffs, wealthy elites who spoke of helping the poor, but changed nothing. Arthur felt it in the air like an approaching storm. Things at work grew worse. One day, a coworker gave him a gun for protection, saying the streets were dangerous. Arthur hid the weapon in his pocket, but during one assignment at a children's hospital, it fell out. Management saw it, and he was fired. Now he walked home without a job, empty-handed and heavy-hearted. That evening on the subway, 3 men in expensive suits harassed a woman. Arthur sat across from them. His laughter burst out involuntarily from the tension. They turned to him, began shoving him, tearing off his wig, punching his face and ribs. Pain flared brightly. The laughter turned into a scream, and then his hand reached for the gun. Shots rang out in the confined space. Bodies fell. Blood spread across the floor. Arthur ran out onto the platform, hid in a public restroom, and there, staring into the mirror at his battered face, he began to dance slowly. The movements were smooth, almost graceful, as if his body had finally found its rhythm in the chaos. From that day, Gotham changed. People wearing clown masks began walking the streets, protesting against the rich and injustice. Arthur saw it on television and on the streets, but did not understand that he himself had become the spark. At home, Penny lay in bed while he continued writing in his notebook. He found his mother's old letters claiming his father was a famous billionaire, Thomas Wayne. For a moment, Arthur believed it and went to the Wayne mansion. There, in the grand hall, he met the boy, Thomas's son, and tried to amuse him with simple hand tricks. But the servant drove him away, and Thomas himself refused to speak. The police began investigating the subway murders, and Arthur denied everything while sitting in the hospital beside his mother, who had suffered a stroke from the stress. In the hospital, Arthur sneaked into the archives and read the old records. They contained the truth. Penny had allowed men to abuse him as a child, and the story about his father was her delusion born of obsession. The pain of betrayal was stronger than any previous blow. Returning to the ward, he stepped inside and stood by her bedside in heavy silence. Within moments, her breathing had quietly ceased, and he turned away, leaving the room without looking back. Now Arthur was alone. Co-workers came to his apartment supposedly to offer condolences, but one began to threaten him. Arthur grabbed scissors and struck again and again until the man fell. He let the kind Gary go, watching him leave in fear. Then Arthur went to the bathroom, dyed his hair bright green, applied white makeup to his face, drew a wide red smile, and put on a colorful suit. In the mirror stood not the thin clown anymore, but someone new, with eyes full of emptiness and power. He was invited to appear on the very show he had watched for years. On the way, the police pursued him, but a crowd wearing clown masks surrounded the detectives, allowing Arthur to slip away. On stage, he moved freely, dancing under the spotlights. When the host tried to mock him, Arthur confessed to the subway murders, explaining how the city had broken him. Then he fired the shot, and the room exploded into chaos. The city filled with fire and screams. People in clown masks burned cars, smashed shop windows, danced in the streets. Arthur, already in handcuffs, rode in a police car, but the crowd stopped it. In the moment the doors opened, he ran his finger across his face, smearing blood into a wide smile. From that moment, Arthur Fleck ceased to exist in his former form. Gotham came to know him as the Joker, a man who showed that a smile could be a weapon and laughter could be revolution. He sat in a cell, staring at the walls where echoes of his past mixed with the noise of street riots outside. His body ached from old wounds, his mind danced in circles, and the city kept burning, inspired by someone who had once simply wanted people to laugh at him kindly. Weeks blurred into months. The riots gradually faded, the fires were put out, the clown masks were discarded in gutters and hidden away. Gotham repaired its broken streets, boarded up shattered windows, and convinced itself the chaos had passed. The wealthy returned to their high towers, the poor to their daily struggles, and the news shifted to other stories. In Arkham Asylum, the white walls and locked doors became his permanent surroundings. Time moved slowly there. A psychiatrist sat across from him during sessions, asking questions about his thoughts and the laughter that still came without warning. Arthur listened quietly, head slightly tilted, a faint curve remaining at the corners of his mouth. The laughter would begin softly, then grow clearer and steadier, filling the small room with its own rhythm. When asked what amused him now, he would meet her gaze for a long moment before the sound subsided into silence. He rose from the chair, turned, and walked down the long corridor. Behind him, faint red traces lingered on the clean floor like remnants of an unfinished smile. The laughter echoed softly as he disappeared around the corner. Outside the thick windows, Gotham continued its restless existence, wounded yet enduring. In its shadowed corners, new white faces were already being painted, new laughs practiced in front of cracked mirrors. The city breathed on, indifferent and waiting. The joke had landed, but the stage remained far from empty. The next act was only just beginning.